"Daddy, do you think someone will find it?" Those were the last words 4-year-old Lily Hargrove said before she fell asleep in the back seat, her small hand still pressed against the car window, fading with her breath. Her father, Marcus Hargrove, glanced in the rear-view mirror at her, cheeks flushed, lashes resting like soft brushstrokes against her skin, and felt something tighten in his chest. She had dropped her drawing somewhere at the zoo. A crayon drawing of a yellow sun, a purple elephant, and a little girl holding her daddy's hand. She had been heartbroken. He had told her it was just paper. But he knew better than anyone, it was never just paper. Renata Calloway was 27 years old, and she had learned long ago not to expect mornings to be gentle. She arrived at the Riverside City Zoo before the gates opened, her cart squeaking across the damp pavement, the October air cool against her face. She cleaned enclosures, collected forgotten things, swept pathways that would be crowded again by noon. It was quiet work, invisible work. She didn't mind. She had grown up invisible. Raised by a single mother who worked double shifts, Renata had learned to find beauty in small things. The way pigeons walked with purpose, the way children laughed without self-consciousness. She had wanted to study art once, just once, but life had other ideas, and she had made peace with that, mostly. It was near the elephant enclosure, Lily's favorite, that Renata saw it, tucked under a wooden bench, slightly crumpled, dampened at one corner by dew. A child's drawing, a yellow sun, a purple elephant, a little girl and a tall figure standing hand in hand, their crayon arms overlapping, leaning into each other. Renata crouched down and picked it up carefully, the way you handle something that still matters to someone. In shaky, enormous letters, the handwriting of someone who had just learned to hold a pencil. It read, "For Daddy. Love, Lily." Renata sat back on her heels for a long moment. She thought about her own father, who had never stayed long enough to receive anything. She thought about what it must mean to a little girl to give someone a drawing and have it lost. She thought about the tall figure in the picture, leaning toward the small one. She slipped the drawing carefully into her jacket pocket, smoothed flat against her chest, and carried it through the rest of her shift. It took her 3 days to track down the family. The zoo had a lost and found log, and she sweet-talked the front office supervisor, kind, patient Gerald Okafor, into letting her search through entry records for families with young children that Saturday. It was a long shot. Gerald told her so. She nodded and kept looking. She found a name, Hargrove, 1 adult, 1 child under 5. She wrote the name down on her palm in blue ink, the old habit of someone who had never owned a planner. She mailed the drawing that same afternoon, carefully sealed between 2 pieces of cardboard so it wouldn't bend, wrapped in brown paper, with a short handwritten note. "Your daughter left this near the elephants. It looked too important to throw away. I hope it finds her safely. R. Calloway, Zoo Staff." She didn't expect anything back. She didn't send it for anything back. Marcus Hargrove was standing at his studio window when his housekeeper brought in the parcel. No return address beyond a name and the zoo's zip code. He was in the middle of a commission, distracted, tired in the way that success sometimes makes a person tired. Then he opened it. He stood very still for a long time. The drawing was Lily's. He recognized every crooked line, the purple that went outside the elephant's edges, the sun with 9 uneven rays. He had watched her make this. He hadn't known she'd brought it to the zoo. He hadn't known she'd lost it, only that she had cried quietly on the way home and said someone had her picture. He had said, gently, "We'll make another one, Bug." She had looked out the window and said nothing. He read the note twice, then a third time. It looked too important to throw away. Marcus was 33 years old, and had been called a genius by people who wrote about art for a living. He had won awards with names longer than his arm. He had paintings in 2 national galleries, and standing in his studio, holding a note written in careful, humble cursive by a stranger who had taken 3 days to return a child's crayon drawing, He felt more moved than he had by any review he had ever received. He framed the drawing that evening. He hung it beside his own work. What Marcus didn't know, what no one outside her own quiet life knew, was that Renata Calloway drew. She drew on her lunch breaks, on the backs of paper bags, in the margins of her zoo schedule. She had sketchbooks under her bed that no one had ever seen. Figures mostly. Hands. Faces caught mid-expression. She drew the way some people pray, privately, consistently, without expecting an audience. When Marcus wrote back, a real letter, handwritten, which surprised even him, he thanked her simply. He said Lily had cried when he showed her the drawing was home. He said he was an artist, and he knew what it meant to protect something small and true. He asked, almost shyly for a man of his reputation, if she might like to visit the studio sometime. Only if you'd like. Renata read the letter on her break, sitting on an overturned bucket near the service entrance. She read it twice. Then she looked up at the sky, gray and wide and indifferent, and felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Seen. She visited on a Tuesday. She almost didn't go. She stood outside the building for 4 minutes before Gerald, who had driven her there on his day off, insisting, said quietly, "Renata, you mailed a drawing back to a stranger because it mattered to a child. You're not someone who walks away from things." She went in. Marcus showed her the studio. He showed her the framed drawing on the wall, hanging next to a canvas worth $30,000, level and proud. Lily was there, small and serious, clutching a stuffed elephant. She looked at Renata for a long moment and then held the elephant out toward her. "This is Plum," Lily said. "He was there when I drew the picture." "Then he's very important," Renata said, crouching to Lily's level. "Just like the picture." Lily considered this carefully, then nodded. Marcus, watching from across the room, quietly asked if he could see her sketchbook. She almost said no. Then she handed it to him. He was quiet for a very long time. "Renata," he said finally, his voice low, "these are extraordinary. Do you know that?" She looked away. "I just draw what I see." "That," he said simply, "is exactly what art is." He offered her an apprenticeship, not as charity. He made that clear with the directness of someone who respected her enough not to soften it into something small. He had a foundation. He taught emerging artists 1 day a week. He wanted her there. She cried in the car on the way home. Gerald pretended not to notice and turned the radio up softly. A year later, Renata's first small exhibition opened in a gallery on the east side of the city. The pieces were quiet things, hands, faces, ordinary moments made luminous. On the wall beside the entrance hung a single framed piece, a child's drawing, a yellow sun, a purple elephant, a little girl and her father, leaning together. Beneath it, a small card read, "This is where it began. A little girl lost something. A stranger cared enough to return it. And in that small act of kindness, 2 lives quietly changed." Lily stood beside her stuffed elephant and studied the drawing on the wall with the seriousness of a small person looking at something that belongs to history. Marcus stood beside Renata and said, "How does it feel?" She looked at the room, the people, the light, the work on the walls that had lived for years in the dark under her bed. "Like something found its way home," she said softly. He smiled. "That's exactly what happened." Kindness doesn't ask for credit. It doesn't need an audience. Sometimes it's just a person crouching on cold pavement, picking up something small because it mattered to someone. And sometimes that one quiet act of care becomes the thing that changes everything. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. Let's spread more stories of kindness and hope together.